Okay, so the 2017 question 8 on functions, junior cert higher level. A school can get its electricity from one of two companies, Buzz or Lecky. The graphs below show the cost of the electricity per month from each company. If the school uses X units of electricity, so X units of electricity and the cost. The cost from Buzz is B of X, and the cost from Lecky is L of X. One of the companies charges a fixed fee per month plus a fee for each unit of electricity used. State which company charges no fixed fee. Give a reason for your answer based on the graph. So there's a section on your course which is all about bills, and different books call it different sections. It's the financial ones, it's in with VAT, or it can be in with VAT and income tax, and that section on bills. Okay, and there's a standing rate or standing charge that they talk about a lot. Okay, and this is this as well. It's a fixed fee each month. Okay, or a standing charge. So how you figure out what is your standing charge or your fixed fee a month is when you use no units. So what does that mean? Well, if I can use your phone as an example and data, if you used no data, so if you were on a bill phone, a bill pay, and you used no data for the month, you made no calls, sent no texts, you did nothing basically with your phone. It just, maybe the charger was broken, it just sat on your locker. So you used no units. Well, with the bill phone, you have a standing charge, okay? Or you have a set amount every month that you have to pay regardless of whether you use it or not. Okay, that's what a standing charge is. So when I look up here, can you see this company here? Its bill does not start at 0. It's starting halfway up, okay, which that's 100, so 50. Okay, so this one here, and I'm just looking here, is euros, starts at 50 euros. Who is that? That's Buzz. Yeah. Lecky then, on the other hand, starts at 0. So if I use no units or no data with Lecky, I don't get a charge. Okay, so the company which charges no fixed fee is L of X, so Lecky. Reason, the graph starts at 0, or there is no charge for 0 units used. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. When we do some questions on bills and so on and so forth, we'll come across this standing charge business again. Okay, but it's always the one that when you use nothing, so let that be 0 bits of data, 0 units of electricity, 0 units of gas, or whatever the bill is, when you use none, you still get charged. Okay. Write down the domain and range of the function b of x as shown in the diagram. Okay, so the domain and range. So can you remember what they are again? Domain is the inputs or the x values, and range is the outputs. Okay, or that's how I remember them. So my inputs is always on the x-axis. Okay, we feed these into our function. So our domain in this case is from 0 to 1,000. Okay, and they're not set values. Can you see the graph is continuous? Okay, so which one am I doing? B of x. So it's continuous. Wrong one. This one, B of x. Okay, so in other words, I don't just have points along the way, I have a continuous graph. Okay, so when I'm talking about my domain in this case, I would describe it as 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 1,000. Okay, because we go up here to 1,000. So x, the number of units, lies between 0 and 1,000. That's what we are feeding into our our function. This differs slightly from the 2018 question that we did, where we had set values for our input, okay? Remember, it was a table of X values and we had some set ones. So when we gave the domain in that case, we just gave the set values. Here we don't have the table, we have the graph, okay? So we have to give our domain as the inputs, all of the inputs between 0 and 1,000. And our range then is everything from 50, because that's our lowest value, up to bringing across the line here. So that looks like 325. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So what I'm doing, excuse me, what I'm doing is I'm counting the boxes up here. I know the whole thing is 100. There's 4 boxes here. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So he's 325. He would be 350. He would be 375. And that's how you figure out those intermediate values. So this comes across at 325. So it's from 50 to 325. Okay. So our range then, our outputs, what are we calling it? B of X lies between 50 and 325. Okay. Yeah, I did do the right one. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So compare it to the 2018 question and just see kind of just the two different ways they can ask you about the domain and range. Okay, now these are typical questions that comes up on functions. Use the graphs to estimate the set of values where B of X is less than, okay, L for less than, L of X. So I come over here and there's my B of X, okay, there's my L of X there. So I'm going, when is B of X less than L of X? Well, it's less than it here, here, all the way down here to there. Okay, can you see at that point, this one is higher. Okay, so I'll do B of X there. So anywhere here, B of X buzz is less than L of X. B is less than X. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, you dot down here on your x-axis and you figure out what value that is. So it's halfway between 0 and 200, so it's 100. And again, I've covered that, I can't see where it is. Okay, so I dot down here and it looks like it's at 800 there, like that. Okay, so use the graphs to estimate the values. So 100 is less than or equal to X is less than 800. Okay, now if you're uncomfortable with maths language, okay, try not let it bother you. You can just go between 100 and 800. Okay, or something to that effect. Explain what your answer is to part C. Part 1 means about the cost of electricity from Buzz and Lecky. Explain what your answer to part C. Part 1 means. Okay, so in other words, they want you to explain that. Okay, so what does it mean between here and here about the cost of electricity? Well, if B of X is less than it during this proportion of the graph, well then isn't Buzz cheaper? But outside of that, isn't Lecky cheaper? Okay, so if I continue with that purple line, just so we can see the difference. Okay, so between those two values, the orange one is cheaper because it's lower than this one. However, here, L of x, Lecky is cheaper, and here Lecky is cheaper. Okay, so these are typical questions that are asked when how to interpret graphs. Okay, so explain your answer means about the cost of electricity from buzz. So between 100 and 800 units, buzz is cheaper. Less than 100 units and more than 800 units, and I'm getting the word units from here, Lecky is the cheapest. Okay, find the slope of the graph. Okay, so now they're bringing a little bit of coordinate geometry into the graph for you. We need to find the graph of B of x, the graph of the orange one. So let me find my slope. There she lies. Okay, so my slope for any chapter, any question, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So to do this, don't I need 2 points? You could say they didn't give you any points, but you are free to read points off the graph. Okay, and you can read off any points that are easy to read off. So I'm just going to delete off my thick lines here now so that we can accurately read off points. Okay, so let's have a look. And let me try and describe some points that are good. So some points that are good are the ones that's at the corners of the boxes. Do you see like that? So that it's got a set value. The bad ones are as if they're in the middle of a box like that, because it's hard to read off the x and y coordinates of those ones. Okay, so when I'm looking at the B graph, which is the straight line, I'm looking for ones that cross at the box, at a whole box. So that's one. I could use that one. That looks good. I could, of course, use that one at the end. That's not a great one. Do you see it kind of crosses between boxes? Okay, but I only need 2. So how about we take this one, okay, which we know is coordinates. So always the x coordinate before the y. So my x coordinate is 0. My y coordinate is 50. And then the coordinates of this one would be my x1 is 1000 and my y1 is 325. Okay, so they are 2 decent points. So we have, if you can remember, 0 and 50 and 1000 and 325. x1, y1 of my first point, x2, y2 of my second point, and let's sub them in. My slope is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Put that into your calculator. I'm just going to grab my calculator there. So let's put him in. Let's see what we get. And I'm getting 0.275. Okay, or as a fraction, 11 over 40. Okay, so either of them. Okay, so explain what D part 1. So what does that slope mean about the cost of electricity from buzz? So what does a slope of 0.275 mean here? Okay, well, what it means by slope is equal to rise over run. Okay, you might have heard that. Rise being the y's, which is up and down on our axis like that. It's a rise. Our run is the x's. which is here. Okay, so what does it mean if we have a slope of 0.75 or 11 over 40? Well, what it means by what it means is if my what a slope of that means is that if my units, if I use 40 units of electricity, my bill would go up by 11 euros. How do I know all that? Well, I know that my x-axis, my run, is units used, and I know my cost is in euros, is here on the y-axis. Okay, so for every 40 units of electricity that I use, my bill goes up by 11. Okay, or if I think about 0.275 as a slope, for every unit of electricity that is used, the bill increases, and it increases because it's positive by 0.275. Okay, so they're quite hard now, where they're asking you to interpret questions. Okay, so they're the kind of harder questions that can come up on this. Okay, and that concludes that question.